The price tag didn't change. Your life did. Same grocery store, same basket, same total on the receipt. But somehow, by the end of the month, your bank balance feels thinner. Not dramatically, quietly, like a leak you can't see but can't ignore. That's inflation's favorite trick. Most people think inflation is about prices going up. It isn't. That's just the surface. Inflation is about how your household is slowly forced to change its behavior without being asked. And right now, that process is accelerating. This matters because inflation doesn't hit families evenly. It doesn't announce itself with alarms. It rewrites your strategy first, your choices second, and your future last. Let's start with a simple scene. A household sitting at a kitchen table. Income hasn't changed. Jobs are the same. Bills are familiar. Nothing looks broken. But inflation doesn't attack income first. It attacks flexibility. The moment prices rise, even a little, your margin for error shrinks. That extra cash that used to absorb surprises, it disappears. Car repair, medical bill, school fee, unexpected travel. These don't feel more expensive individually. They feel closer together. Inflation compresses time. Suddenly, every decision matters more. Not because you're poor, but because you're less buffered. That's where household strategy starts to change. The first shift is invisible. You don't cut spending dramatically. You delay. You wait an extra month before replacing something. You stretch subscriptions. You postpone upgrades. You ignore small repairs. This feels smart, responsible. But inflation loves delay because delay is where costs stack up. Fixing something later usually costs more. Buying later usually means paying higher prices. Waiting quietly converts mild inflation into future stress. Now the second shift begins. You start trading quality for price. Cheaper brands. Smaller packages. Less durable goods. Not because you want to, because your budget math quietly demands it. This is where inflation starts rewriting outcomes. Lower quality items break faster. They get replaced more often. The cheap option becomes the expensive habit. Inflation doesn't punish spending. It punishes replacement cycles. Next comes the emotional shift. You become more cautious, but not calmer. You check prices more often. You think twice before purchases that used to be automatic. Decision fatigue creeps in. When everything costs more, every choice carries weight. That mental load is part of inflation's cost, and no one includes it in the statistics. Now let's zoom out. Inflation isn't random. It's not just things getting expensive. It's the result of money entering the system unevenly. New money doesn't land in your wallet first. It enters through governments, banks, corporations, and financial markets. By the time it reaches households, prices have already adjusted. That means households are always reacting, never leading. Inflation is a game where households play defense while institutions play offense. And defense changes strategy. Savings stop feeling safe. Cash loses certainty. Money in a bank account quietly loses purchasing power. So households respond rationally. They stop holding cash. They look for something that holds value. Real estate, stocks, crypto, anything. This is where hype enters. Inflation doesn't just raise prices, pushes people into risk. Not because they're greedy, because standing still feels like losing. The uncomfortable math is simple. If inflation runs at 6% and your savings earn 2%, you are paying a 4% tax silently. No bill, no vote, no receipt. So households stretch. They invest money they might need soon. They take loans assuming future income will catch up. They normalize debt. Debt feels lighter during inflation. At first, because inflation shrinks the real value of past loans. But this creates a trap. When inflation forces interest rates up, debt flips from helper to threat. Monthly payments jump. Variable rates adjust. Credit tightens. Households that relied on cheap debt suddenly face expensive survival. This is where inflation stops being annoying and starts being dangerous. Now comes the irony. Inflation encourages spending early, but punishes spending wrong. By too late, you pay more. Buy too early, you risk buying unnecessary things. Save too much, you lose purchasing power. Invest too aggressively, you risk losses. There is no perfect move. That's the psychological pressure inflation creates. Households aren't bad with money. They're navigating a system designed to keep shifting the rules. Let's talk about wages. Wages always lag inflation. Always. Employers adjust salaries slowly. Contracts take time. Negotiations are delayed. Prices move immediately. Paychecks don't. That gap is where household stress lives. It's why inflation feels worse than the numbers suggest. Because people live in the lag. Eventually wages catch up, partially. But by then, habits have changed. Lower expectations become normal. Smaller portions feel acceptable. Delayed goals feel permanent. This is inflation's deepest impact. It lowers the reference point. You don't remember what used to feel affordable. You adapt. And adaptation looks like resilience, but often hides quiet loss. Now let's contrast hype versus reality. Hype says inflation helps debtors and hurts savers. Reality says inflation rewards people who already own assets and punishes those trying to build stability. If you own a house, inflation inflates your asset. If you're saving for one, inflation stretches the finish line. If you have investments, prices rise with inflation over time. If you rely on wages, you chase prices. Inflation isn't neutral. It redistributes power. And households feel this redistribution not through charts, but through choices. Fewer risks taken. Fewer long-term plans. More short-term thinking. When inflation lasts long enough, households stop planning decades ahead. They plan months ahead. That changes societies. Lower investment in education. Delayed family formation. Reduced mobility. Not because people lack ambition. Because inflation increases uncertainty. Now zoom out one final step. When millions of households change strategy at the same time, the economy changes shape. Consumption shifts. Savings patterns distort. Asset bubbles inflate. Policymakers talk about inflation like it's a number to manage. Households experience it like a fog that never fully lifts. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Inflation isn't just an economic event. It's a behavioral one. It trains households to be reactive instead of deliberate, defensive instead of optimistic. And once that mindset sets in, even when inflation slows, the habits remain. So the real question isn't, when will inflation go down? The real question is, after inflation quietly reshapes how households think, save, spend, and plan, do they ever go back to how they lived before?